Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bibliophila, where I discuss books that inspire us, enrich our minds and broaden our mental horizon. Let's begin today's episode with a review of yet another book. Today, I'll be talking about a book, The Call of the Wild by Jack London. This book is an eminent work of animal fiction set in the late 19th century Klondike Gold Rush, which saw the migration of about 100,000 people to the region of Yukon in northwestern Canada. In 1896, gold was discovered there by a group of local miners, and this incident brought forth people from San Francisco and Seattle with the dream of getting large amounts of the yellow metal. These gold prospectors were required to have sufficient money, food, clothing and equipment necessary for surviving the intense cold in the Klondike region. They required strong, thick-furred, muscular dogs to carry these provisions from one place to another, and also to carry mails and letters from the Klondike gold fields to the nearby towns and villages. Buck was one such huge St. Bernard dog who was the adorable pet of Judge Miller in the sun-kissed Santa Clara Valley. When he was there, no other dog counted. He was neither a house dog nor a kennel dog. He dominated over every other creature in the judge's house, whether animal or human. He plunged into the swimming pool, went hunting with the judge's sons, or accompanied the judge's daughters on long walks, or rolled the judge's grandchildren on his back. His mother was a Scotch shepherd, and his father was a huge St. Bernard, making Buck a huge Scotch St. Bernard weighing about 140 pounds. On the unfortunate day which would change Buck's life completely, the judge was at a meeting and his boys were busy organizing a club. Manuel, one of the gardener's helpers, played Chinese lottery, and to gamble money was essential. Hence, it is evident that he was involved in some kind of business that consisted of kidnapping huge thick-furred dogs and deporting them to the Klondike gold fields. He took Buck on a walk which the dog thought to be a mere stroll. Manuel arrived with Buck at a little flag station called College Park and handed Buck over to a man. Buck tried to put up a fight, but in vain. The man was an expert in handling huge dogs and threw Buck off in no time. Panting with fury and pain, Buck was hurled into the baggage car of a train. Men tried to grasp his throat, but he closed his jaws on their hand, leaving them howling in pain. At night, he was thrown off the train and choked repeatedly until the rope came off his neck, and he was thrown into a cage-like crate. He was very angry, and in addition to that, he did not even know what was happening to him. All that was happening because men had found the gold, and Manuel was paid a small salary. It was here that he was first introduced to the club, and very soon he understood that a man with a club is not one to be crossed. It was his introduction to the reign of primitive law. He received a shock that checked his body and brought his teeth together with an agonizing clip. He whirled over, fetching the ground on his back and side. He had never been struck by a club in his life and did not understand. With a snarl that was part bark and more scream, he was again on his feet and launched into the air. And again the shock came, and he was brought crushingly to the ground. This time he was aware that it was the club, but his madness knew no caution. A dozen times he charged, and as often the club broke the charge and smashed him down. There were many other dogs besides himself on the ship from Seattle, including Curly, a good-natured Newfoundland. Buck and Curly became fast friends, but life for Buck was filled with shock and surprises. He had been flung from the heart of civilization into the wild. Everything was in confusion, and he was constantly afraid of losing his life to savage wolfish dogs who had never had a civilized upbringing. These wolfish dogs only knew the rule of club and fang. One unfortunate day, they were camped near the log store, and Curly tried to make friendly advances towards these wolfish dogs. One of them was a husky, and he was the size of a full-grown wolf. He leaped at Curly and tore her from eye to jaw. The other dogs closed in upon her and struck at her legs. When she fell down, they buried her alive. This scene often tormented Buck's dreams, and he very soon understood that there was no fair play. Once down, that was the end of you. Francois, one of Buck's masters, one day fastened on Buck an arrangement of buckles. This was a harness with which Buck was set to work, hauling Francois on a sled and leading him through the snow to the forest, returning with a log of firewood. This deeply hurt Buck's dignity because he was being used as a draught animal, but he tried his best to obey his master. However, Buck was a very fast learner, and under the influence of Dave Spitz and Francois, he soon learned how to walk in the snow. So very soon they set out for the Daya-Canon. Days after days, Francois and Perrault travelled along with the dogs. Buck grew oblivious to all physical pain. His muscles tightened and he could eat anything, however loathsome or indigestible. His sight, sense and hearing became so keen that he could even distinguish sounds in his sleep. Finally, they arrived at Skagway and the dogs were handed over to Charles Hall and Mercedes. Here began their primary inhuman torture. The dogs were made to walk for miles in the snow, pulling the sledge along with them. Soon all the stiffness and glow from Buck's beautiful furry coat was lost, his muscles wasted away and his flesh pads disappeared. He travelled along with his masters at the head of the team as if in a nightmare. They arrived at the mouth of the White River at John Thornton's camp. Buck was too tired to even stand up, and no amount of whips could make him oblivious to Hall's commands. The men left him there and set out for Dawson with Pike, Teagues, Joe and Sol-leks. John Thornton knelt by Buck's sides and with kind hands searched for broken bones. There were more than 10 bruises and terrible starvation. From then on, Buck was loving John Thornton's dog, and for the love of a man he could give up his life. Love, genuine passionate love, was his for the first time. This he had never experienced at Judge Miller's down in the sun-kissed Santa Clara Valley. With the judge's sons hunting and tramping, it had been a working partnership. With the judge's grandsons, a sort of pompous guardianship, and with the judge himself, a stately and dignified friendship. But love that was feverish and burning, that was adoration, that was madness, it had taken John Thornton to arouse. Soon Buck set out with Thornton and his two friends Pete and Hans to the east after a fabled lost mine. It was here that Buck finally heard the call of the wild. Sometimes he pursued the call into the forest, looking for it as though it were a tangible thing, barking softly or defiantly as the mood might dictate. He would thrust his nose into the cool wood moss or into the black soil where long grasses grew and snort with joy the fat earth smells, or he would crouch for hours as if in concealment behind fungus-covered trunks of fallen trees, wide-eyed and wide-eared to all that moved and sounded about him. It might be lying thus that he hoped to surprise this call he could not understand, but he did not know why he did these various things. He was impelled to do them and did not reason about them at all. He would always be seen trying to hear that call. Irresistible impulses seized him. He would be running towards the forest in search of the call. His ancestral instincts were awakened, which were marred by the luxury of civilization. But the love of one man held him back. Such was the strength of John Thornton's affections for Buck. But gradually, Buck began answering the call. As he drew closer and closer to the forest, he heard a distinct, long-drawn howl from a lean timber wolf. They sniffed noses and became fast friends. The wolf taught him to kill, chase and hunt animals in the forest, and one day, without even knowing it, Buck howled along with the other wolves and thus answered the call of the wild. And so he was finally liberated from the inhuman torture that he had to face in the heart of civilization. Jack London presents Buck as more of a human character rather than an animal character. Buck is capable of feeling love, torture, pain and anger. There are many slave narratives in the world which mainly revolve around humans, but Jack London is one of those few writers who have studied animal behavior and attributes human qualities to them. In this book, he depicts the inhuman torture of man upon animals in a heart-wrenching manner. There are many groups in the world who fight against the cruelty to animals, but there are a very few writers like Jack London who depict this inhuman torture in a vivid manner. I sincerely hope that you have liked this analysis of the book The Call of the Wild by Jack London. If you have, please do not forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. I have provided the links of my previous videos in the description below so that you may watch them. I'll be back again with an analysis of yet another book. Till then, happy reading.